Hey, Paul. Maybe tie up a loose end with Jordie Benn. Is he joining the team on the road? Is he coming to snowbound Winnipeg? And does he need
Yeah.
a 7-day?
No. So he is going to be out of his quarantine, and then we will charter him on Thursday so that he won't have to do a 7-day quarantine. So we expect him at the rink Friday.
We'll go next to Jason Bell from the Winnipeg Free Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, Paul. You said, obviously yesterday wasn't the way you wanted it to go, and you took a lot of that on your shoulders. You wanted to take maybe sleep on it and take a look at the tape. What's the day after the night before scenario with that Ottawa game?
It wouldn't be a whole lot different than the way you felt walking off the bench, but there's a couple of things you learn over time that when you walk off the bench and there's a piece to your game you don't like, and there's lots of pieces that you like, you just handle that piece. And then some nights you go through the game and there would be something that you don't like that went straight through your lineup. And that's just, you didn't have them ready to play the game they needed to play. I've been fortunate this year. I don't feel that that's happened very often. We've been pretty good most nights and came off a couple of good solid games. That game we played at Ottawa at home, there were lots of really good things in it, but we get, like handful of even strength shots through 2 periods. That's a tell that we're not driving, and give up 3 or 4 breakaways. You're not defending. So it was we weren't very good, and there wouldn't be an aspect that of our game that necessarily stood out more off. We were off in just about everything we did.
Go next to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Hey, good afternoon, Paul. Kevin Cheveldayoff said yesterday that one of the things he was kind of looking for was maybe a little more NHL action for Ville Heinola. A, have you guys had that conversation? And B, have you kind of, I don't know if you'd share the details with us, but have you kind of mapped out a game plan for that, and also for getting Jordie into a few games here down the stretch?
Well, we'll probably be able to get both those guys in, I would think, down the stretch. They're, at that point on the depth chart, they're probably next in. So we'll get them some games, I guess.
Go next to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. Saw Blake skating yesterday. I know, I believe you'd said that's the second time he's on the ice. How has he responded to those on-ice sessions, and where do you feel he is in his progression in an area where it's hard to tell where a guy's progression is?
Yeah, I mean, he's actually a pretty easy guy to read because he's got a real good understanding of how hard he pushes himself on a daily basis. If he says he's worked hard, then he's worked hard. He's progressing. That's all I got. I mean, the next stage is that he'll go flat out. He'll have to get cleared by the doctors, pass the test, and then get into a bump in practice, feel good about that, and then we'll move forward.
We'll go back to Kelly Moore from CJOB. Go ahead, Kelly.
Paul, when you look at the Ottawa Senators, do you see them as being kind of on the same arc, if you will, that you guys were, say, in 15, 16, 16, 17? Do they remind you a lot of that reset process that you went through when you kind of first got here?
Yeah, I think so. They've got probably 4 or 5 really good young players, and then some players maybe that are effective. They aren't necessarily offensive guys, but pretty effective. And those guys are going to be good for an awfully long time, right? Every year they'll just get a little bit better. And, 2 things will happen as they get better. You start bringing in different kinds of veterans that aren't necessarily offensive guys, but they're those penalty killer grit kind of guys that can shut a team down, because your skill guys will just start developing and scoring more goals. So yeah, I mean, they got some good young players there. Part of the reason why I don't know, necessarily grumpier than normal yesterday, but I had a hard time losing a hockey game to Ottawa. And what teams, you always hear the coach say, "Oh, we were terrible tonight." And that's just disrespectful to the Ottawa Senators. I think one of the things we've done this year well is not disrespect them. They got good skill. They work hard. that night, you know, last night we weren't good. It was the first game I think we played against Ottawa. I didn't think we were particularly competitive. We didn't get outshot or I don't know. There wasn't. I mean, they just on zone time alone. They didn't spend a lot of time in our end. It was just breakaway and out, unfortunately. But they're a good team, and if you don't play hard against them, they got a real good chance of beating you.
I'll go back to Jason Bell from the Free Press. Go ahead, Jason.
Hey, Paul, you know, traditionally at a 66 or 67 or 68 game mark, whatever we're at, you got the ones up against Vancouver have kind of screwed up my math, but you might be in a race for a playoff spot, or, you know, this is a different scenario where you probably aren't going down much, and you probably maybe aren't going up much. You're going to the playoffs likely, and so I wonder what your philosophy will be on resting guys and maybe giving Scheifele and Morrissey a night off. Kind of what, I mean, sort of a similar situation you did in 2018, but maybe with a little more emphasis and more than just one game.
Well, we'll wait until the final schedule, what that last week looks like with the potential of, so I know it's out now. I'm still not sure that's set in stone. Obviously more things could happen that will delay. So I don't know what the block of time, if you make the playoffs, to when your playoff start is. And that's going to impact a lot what we do. We won't pull anybody out of the lineup when we have an opportunity to move up in the standings. I don't want to, certainly not even contemplating that right now. I mean, we are working on a game that we've been getting better at. Last night tells us we got lots of work to do on it, but we'll just stay on that. Those decisions will be made once we know exactly what the potential first day off is. Because if you end up having, this thing gets pushed back further and you have 6 or 7 days between your last game and your first playoff game, you don't want to be sitting guys out, right? They're going to want those games to stay as sharp as they possibly can. So there's a lot of unknowns before we get to thinking like that.
Go next to Paul Friesen from the Sun. Go ahead, Paul.
Thanks. Just wondering, Paul, how you're liking Andrew Copp up with Scheifele and maybe your top two lines in general. What are you thinking there right now?
Yeah, I mean, I loved him in Montreal. I didn't like anybody last night. So it was really good. I've liked Nikolai was real good last night. I liked that line, Dubois and Stastny. There's something there. I'm pleased that Andrew can go over to the right side, and we know that now going down this stretch. If we get into a situation where we lost a right winger and we didn't want to change a bunch of things, we could move him over because he's become that guy we can move around quite a bit. I still got 1 or 2 more places I think we're going with our lines before the season ends.
Final question to Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet. Go ahead, Sean.
Hey, Paul. I want to go back to Kelly's question about Ville Heinola. Usually when we ask Kevin about player deployment, he's quick to stay out of that and say that that's under your umbrella. Do you know why this situation would be different?
No, I mean, I don't know what the question was or the context of it. He'd like Ville to play, I'm gathering, is the statement. With the way our defense is structured now, you know, we've got kind of 4 left-handed defensemen, if you include Sandberg, that would be the next guys in. I don't know that any of them play the right, except for Sami Niku. So, I mean, if we're going to see all of them, it would be a platoon.